First, light. The steady drum of rain against the windows of Tide and Time created a soothing backdrop to the otherwise bustling cafe. Olivia Hampton tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear as she spread her research notes across the wooden table, grateful she'd arrived early enough to secure her favorite corner spot with the ocean view. Even through the rain-spattered glass, the churning waves of the Pacific provided a calming presence as she reviewed her data on the declining coral populations along the northern reef. "Excuse me?" A voice broke through her concentration. "I hate to interrupt, but there's not a single table left. Would you mind terribly if I joined you? Just until the rain lets up." Olivia glanced up to find a man in his early 30s holding a steaming mug and a leather messenger bag, water droplets clinging to his navy blue jacket. His expression was apologetic, with rainwater running from his dark curls down the side of his face. "Of course," she replied, gathering her papers to clear half the table. "Please sit down." "Thank you. I'm Julian, by the way. Julian Mercer." He extended his free hand as he settled into the chair across from her. "Olivia," she responded, shaking his hand briefly before returning to organizing her notes. Julian sipped his coffee quietly, respecting her space as he pulled out a professional-looking camera and began scrolling through images on its display screen. Olivia tried to focus on her work, but found her eyes wandering to the photographs, stunning shots of the coastline and marine life that she recognized from her research sites. "Are you a photographer?" she asked, curiosity overriding her usual reserve with strangers. Julian's face brightened. "I am. National Geographic sent me to document the coastal ecosystems. I'm focusing on the relationship between human communities and marine conservation." "You're kidding," Olivia said, her professional interest piqued. "I'm a marine biologist with the Coastal Conservation Institute. Those reef formations you've photographed, I've been studying them for 3 years." The coincidence broke the ice completely. Julian turned his camera toward her. "Look at this one. I captured it yesterday at dawn, a pod of orcas near Sawyer's Point." Olivia leaned closer, amazed by the clarity of the image. "That's incredible. We've been tracking that pod. The matriarch has a distinctive dorsal fin. There, you can see it." Their conversation flowed effortlessly after that. Julian explained how he'd traveled to 6 continents capturing the world's most threatened ecosystems, while Olivia shared stories of midnight dives and discoveries that had fueled her passion for marine conservation. The rain continued unabated, but neither seemed to notice as minutes stretched into hours. "I've completely hijacked your work session," Julian said suddenly, noticing her untouched notes. "It's fine," Olivia smiled, surprised to find she meant it. "Actually, I was planning to head to the lab later to check on some samples. If you're interested, I could show you our facilities. Your photographs might benefit from seeing what we're studying up close." Julian's eyes lit up. "I'd love that. Though I should warn you, once I get started asking questions, it's hard to shut me up." "I think I can handle it," she replied with unexpected warmth. "Actually, we're releasing a rehabilitated sea turtle tomorrow morning, if you wanted to photograph that." "Are you inviting me to a second date already?" Julian teased, then immediately backtracked. "Sorry, I didn't mean to presume." "It's not a date," Olivia said quickly, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "It's a professional courtesy." Julian's smile was gentle. "Of course, professional." As the rain finally began to ease, Olivia realized with surprise that the usual weight of her research concerns had lifted. Something about Julian's perspective, the way he saw beauty in the very ecosystems she fought to protect, had shifted her own view, if only temporarily. "Shall we head to your lab?" Julian asked, gathering his things. Olivia nodded, packing away her notes with a strange certainty that this rain-soaked afternoon would mark the beginning of something unexpected in her carefully ordered life. Title: Rhythms, The morning sun cast golden ripples across the water as Olivia guided the small boat toward the release point. Julian sat opposite her, camera ready, his expression a mixture of excitement and reverence as the rehabilitated loggerhead turtle shifted restlessly in its container between them. "We call her Athena," Olivia explained, cutting the engine as they reached the shallow waters of the protected cove. She was entangled in fishing line when a local fisherman found her. Severe damage to her right flipper, but she's a fighter. Julian nodded, adjusting his camera settings. "How long have you been working with her?" "Almost 4 months. Longer than usual, but her recovery was complicated." Olivia's voice softened as she checked the tracking device secured to Athena's shell. "You form attachments, even though you know they need to return to the wild." When everything was ready, they carefully lifted Athena to the edge of the boat. The turtle seemed to sense freedom, becoming suddenly alert as her flippers touched the water. Julian captured the moment of release, Olivia's gentle hands guiding, then letting go, the splash of entry, and finally the powerful strokes as Athena disappeared into the blue depths. "Thank you," Julian said quietly as they watched the ripples fade. "For letting me witness this." Something in his voice made Olivia turn to study him. Unlike most photographers she'd encountered through work, Julian wasn't just collecting images. He was fully present in the moment, affected by it. "The release is always my favorite part of rehabilitation," she admitted. A reminder that despite everything humans have done to damage these ecosystems, we can still contribute to healing them. Over the next week, Julian became a familiar presence at the research center. What had begun as professional courtesy evolved into a comfortable routine. Olivia would finish her morning data collection, and Julian would appear with 2 coffees and questions about her discoveries. In the afternoons, she would occasionally join him on his photography expeditions, showing him hidden tide pools and secluded beaches perfect for capturing the coast's wild beauty. "My assignment was only supposed to last 3 days, Julian confessed one evening as they walked along the shore, the setting sun painting the sky in breathtaking shades of orange and pink. "I've extended it twice now." National Geographic. "Must be very understanding," Olivia replied, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest at this revelation. Julian stopped walking, turning to face the horizon. "I told them I discovered something extraordinary that required further documentation. The bioluminescent algae blooms," Olivia suggested. "They are quite spectacular this season." "Not the algae," Julian said softly, his eyes finding hers, "though they're certainly worth capturing." The implication hung between them, neither quite ready to acknowledge it directly. Instead, they continued walking, their hands occasionally brushing as they navigated the rocky shoreline. On Friday evening, the research center hosted its monthly community lecture. Olivia found herself unusually nervous as she prepared her presentation on coral bleaching trends, aware that Julian would be in the audience. When she stepped onto the small stage and spotted him in the back row, camera resting unused on his lap, his focus entirely on her, the butterflies in her stomach intensified. To her surprise, she delivered one of her most passionate presentations ever. The questions afterward were engaged and thoughtful, lasting well beyond the scheduled time. When the crowd finally dispersed, Julian approached with a gentle smile. "You were incredible," he said. "The way you explained the science made it accessible without oversimplifying. You had everyone captivated." "Even you?" she asked, uncharacteristically playful. "I didn't see you take a single photograph." "Some moments deserve to be experienced rather than captured," Julian replied. "Besides, I wouldn't have been able to do you justice." Later that night, they sat at a driftwood table outside a beachfront restaurant, sharing a bottle of local wine as waves crashed rhythmically against the shore. "Tell me something you haven't told anyone else," Julian said suddenly, leaning forward. Olivia considered the request, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "I almost quit last year," she admitted. The funding cuts, the political resistance to climate. Science, it felt like swimming against an impossible current. What made you stay? A hawksbill turtle, she smiled. Injured by boat propellers, barely alive when we found her. Everyone said she wouldn't make it, but she did. When we released her, she swam straight out to sea without hesitation. No fear, just purpose. Olivia shrugged. I decided if she could face the ocean again after everything, I could face another grant rejection. Julian reached across the table, his fingers gently covering hers. The world needs more people like you. Olivia Hampton. What about you? She asked, not withdrawing her hand. Something you haven't told anyone. Julian's expression grew thoughtful. I've documented some of the most beautiful places on Earth, but I've never felt at home anywhere. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. Until now. The admission hung between them, profound in its simplicity. As the stars appeared one by one above the darkening ocean, Olivia realized that, like the tides themselves, something powerful and inevitable was pulling them toward each other, a force as natural and unstoppable as the rhythms of the sea. Undertow. The research center's laboratory hummed with the familiar sounds of equipment and hushed conversations as Olivia peered through her microscope. 2 weeks had passed since the turtle release, and Julian had become a fixture, not just in her professional life, but in her personal hours as well. The other researchers had stopped raising eyebrows when he arrived with lunch or when she left, early to catch sunset with him at some remote beach location. Dr. Hampton? Her assistant, Theo, appeared at her elbow. There's a call for you. Says it's urgent. Olivia frowned, removing her glasses as she headed to her office. She picked up the phone, expecting perhaps a report of a stranded Marine, mammal, or news about their pending grant application. This is Dr. Hampton. Olivia, Richard Kessler here from National Geographic headquarters. Her stomach tightened. Not Julian's editor. I've been reviewing Julian's work from your area, and it's absolutely spectacular. Some of his best work yet, especially those dawn shots of your research team tagging the dolphins. That's wonderful, she managed, unsure why he was calling her directly. The thing is, we have an unexpected opportunity. The Brazilian government has finally granted us access to document the remote sections of the Amazon where deforestation is most critical. We need our best photographer there immediately, and Julian's extensive experience with environmental conservation makes him perfect. The implications sank in slowly. I see, she said, her voice carefully neutral. And when would this assignment begin? That's why I'm calling you. We can't reach Julian directly, something about poor cell reception on the Northern Peninsula, but we need him on a plane to São Paulo within 48 hours. I was hoping you might help locate him. After promising to deliver the message, Olivia hung up and sat motionless at her desk. The rational part of her brain reminded her that this was Julian's job, traveling the world, documenting environmental stories. The other part, the part that had awakened during their shared sunsets and quiet conversations, felt like she was standing in the path of an approaching tidal wave. She found him exactly where she expected, at the Northern Peninsula, photographing the rugged cliffs as pelicans dove into the churning water below. When he spotted her approaching along the narrow trail, his face lit up with that now familiar smile that made her heart race. "This is a surprise," he called out. "I thought you were buried in lab work all day." "Your editor called," she said, the words coming out more abruptly than intended. "There's an assignment in Brazil. They need you there in 2 days." Julian's smile faded as he lowered his camera. "Brazil? That's not on my schedule until next year." Something about special government access to document deforestation, a rare opportunity. She hated how clinical her voice sounded, as if she were delivering a research report rather than news that was tearing at her insides. "How long?" he asked after a moment. He didn't say. but from what I understand about these remote assignments, months, potentially, Julian finished, running a hand through his hair. Olivia, it's an amazing opportunity, she interrupted, forcing brightness into her tone. Exactly the kind of vital documentation work you told me about, bringing attention to threatened ecosystems. They stood in silence, the wind carrying salt spray around them as seabirds called overhead. All the things they'd left unspoken during these beautiful weeks now hung between them, demanding acknowledgement. Come with me, Julian said suddenly. Olivia blinked. What? Come to Brazil. Your expertise in ecological systems would be invaluable. I could talk to Richard. Julian? I can't just abandon my research. We're in the middle of critical data collection. The coral bleaching study has another 6 months minimum, and my graduate students depend on me for— Of course, he cut in, shaking his head. I wasn't thinking. It was a ridiculous suggestion. That evening, they sat on the porch of Julian's rented cottage, watching the stars emerge. Neither had much appetite for the dinner they'd prepared together, a ritual that had become precious in recent days. I've always known this is how it works, Olivia said finally. You capture these extraordinary moments around the world, then move on to the next assignment. It's what makes your work so powerful. Julian set down his untouched glass of wine. Is that what you think this was? An assignment? A moment to capture before moving on? The hurt in his voice made her look up. Isn't it? Your job is to document, not to stay. My job is to tell stories that matter, he corrected her. And sometimes you find a story you want to be part of, not just document. He reached for her hand across the table. These weeks with you, Olivia, they've changed how I see everything. For the first time in my life, the thought of getting on a plane doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. We barely know each other. That's not true, Julian said quietly. I know that you talk to the marine specimens when you think no one's listening. I know you tap your left foot when you're concentrating. I know your favorite constellation is Cassiopeia because your grandmother taught you to find it. I know you're brilliant and passionate and that you've made me question everything about the life I've built. Olivia swallowed hard. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'll go to Brazil because it matters. But it matters more. I'm asking you to give us a chance to figure out what that means. As the moon rose over the ocean, casting silver light across the water, Olivia faced the truth she'd been avoiding. In letting Julian into her ordered world, she had created a space that would feel unbearably empty without him. Yet loving someone whose life pulled him to the farthest corners of the earth seemed like setting herself up for a tide of heartache. How would it even work? She whispered, voice catching. Your life is everywhere. Mine is here. Julian lifted, her hand to his lips. I don't have all the answers. But I know I don't want to leave tomorrow without knowing if you're willing to try. The night stretched before them, filled with difficult conversations and tentative plans, with promises that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Morning would come too soon, bringing separation and uncertainty. But beneath the surface fear ran a deeper current, the recognition that some connections, once formed, continue to pull even across great distances. Distant shores. The São Paulo airport buzzed with activity as Julian navigated through the crowded terminal, his satellite phone finally connecting after 3 days in the remote reaches of the Amazon basin. The call rang several times before Olivia's voice came through, the sound sending a wave of longing through him despite the static-filled connection. Julian, can you hear me? Her voice carried the familiar mix of scientific precision and warmth that he'd fallen for so completely. Barely, he admitted, finding a quieter corner near a window overlooking the runways. The reception here is better than in the field. How are you? Busy, good busy. We've secured additional funding for the coral monitoring program. He could hear the excitement in her voice. And the preliminary data suggests our restoration techniques are showing promising results. As she described her recent discoveries, Julian closed his eyes, picturing her animated expressions, the way she would gesture with her hands when discussing her research. 6 weeks had passed since he'd boarded the plane to Brazil. 6 weeks of sporadic communication and growing certainty that what they'd found together was far rarer than either had initially recognized. "Enough about coral polyps," she said finally. "Tell me about the Amazon. Is it as magnificent as they say?" Julian described the incredible biodiversity, the towering canopy that blocked out the sun, the indigenous guides who had shown him areas devastated by illegal logging operations. He explained how the magazine had extended his assignment after seeing his initial photographs, requesting a more comprehensive story on the relationship between deforestation and water systems. "They want me to stay another month," he said, the words hanging heavy between them. The silence that followed conveyed what neither wanted to articulate: that a month would become 2, then possibly more; that the distance between them, already challenging, would stretch further. "I've been thinking," Olivia said finally, her voice taking on the deliberate tone she used when presenting a carefully considered hypothesis. "The International Marine Conservation Conference is in Rio next month. I've been invited to present our research." Julian straightened. That's only a few hundred miles from where I'll be." 812 miles to be precise," she replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I checked. Olivia Hampton, did you just find a scientific excuse to come to my continent?" Her laugh carried through the static. "The conference is legitimate, I assure you. The timing is just fortuitous." They made plans to meet in Rio, the prospect illuminating the weeks ahead like a lighthouse on a distant shore. Julian returned to the rainforest with renewed purpose, his camera capturing not just the devastation of environmental degradation, but also the resilience of ecosystems fighting to recover, stories that paralleled his own evolving understanding of adaptation and hope. When they finally reunited in the bustling energy of Rio de Janeiro, the initial moments were awkward, both suddenly shy after weeks of separation. Julian spotted her first, standing outside the conference center, her professional attire a stark contrast to his field-worn clothes. For a breathless moment, he wondered if the connection they'd felt had been amplified by proximity, destined to diminish once tested by distance. Then she turned, saw him, and her entire face transformed. She crossed the distance between them, in quick strides, and when they embraced, the uncertainty dissolved like morning mist under sunlight. "I was worried," she confessed that evening as they walked along Ipanema Beach. The legendary Brazilian sunset, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and purples, that maybe what we felt was just intensity without substance, a vacation romance. Julian laced his fingers through hers. "And now? Now I know it wasn't proximity," she said softly, "because being apart has only made everything clearer." Their 5 days together in Rio passed in a blur of stolen moments between her conference sessions and his magazine obligations. They shared meals at tiny local restaurants, danced to bossa nova music under the stars, and talked endlessly about their work, their dreams, and the growing certainty that their lives were irrevocably intertwined, despite the geographical challenges. On their final evening, sitting on the balcony of Julian's modest hotel room with the lights of the city spread below them, Olivia revealed another surprise. "The Galapagos Marine Research Station has offered me a visiting scientist position," she said, watching his reaction carefully. 3 months studying their unique coral formations and conservation methods. Julian set down his coffee cup. "The Galapagos? When would this start?" "January," she replied. "And before you ask, yes, I checked that too. It's only a 2-hour flight from Quito, where I believe National Geographic has a regional office." A slow smile spread across Julian's face. "Dr. Hampton, are you restructuring your prestigious scientific career around my unpredictable travel schedule? I'm exploring collaborative opportunities that benefit marine conservation while maintaining important professional connections." She corrected him primly, then broke into a grin. "But yes, essentially." The pattern established itself over the following months. Julian continued his environmental documentation across South America, while Olivia balanced her research responsibilities with strategic professional opportunities that brought them together every few weeks. Sometimes their reunions lasted only days, occasionally a full week, but each separation became easier to bear with the certainty of the next reunion on the horizon. They created rituals to bridge the distance. Julian would send her photographs of the sunrise from wherever he was in the world. Olivia would email detailed observations of interesting marine specimens she encountered. They scheduled video calls. When possible, and when connectivity failed them, they wrote old-fashioned letters that sometimes arrived weeks late, but were treasured nonetheless. In October, Julian surprised Olivia by appearing unannounced at her research center's annual fundraising gala. He'd flown directly from Argentina, navigating 3 connections and a rental car breakdown to reach her in time. When she spotted him across the crowded room, still wearing his field boots with his hastily purchased suit, she abandoned the potential donors she'd been courting and crossed the room in a direct line. "You said you couldn't make it," she whispered as they embraced. "I moved some things around," he replied simply. Later that night, as they walked along their familiar stretch of coastline, Olivia stopped suddenly, turning to face him. "This isn't sustainable long-term," she said, her practical nature asserting itself. "We can't keep orbiting each other across continents forever." Julian nodded, the moonlight silvering his features. "I know. I've been thinking about that too." "Have you reached any conclusions?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light despite the weight of the question. "Several," he replied, reaching for her hand. "None of which I'm quite ready to share. Tonight. But soon." As they continued their walk, the waves keeping rhythm with their steps, Olivia realized that despite the uncertainty of their future, she felt a profound sense of peace. The past months had taught her that some connections didn't weaken with distance. They clarified, strengthened, and deepened, like rivers finding their inevitable path to the sea. Return to Harbor Snow dusted the coastal landscape as Olivia made her way along the familiar path to the research center, her breath forming clouds in the December air. The winter months always brought a different rhythm to her work. Fewer field expeditions, more time analyzing data and preparing publications. This particular morning carried additional significance. It marked exactly 1 year since a rain-soaked afternoon had brought Julian Mercer into her life. Their most recent reunion had been 6 weeks ago in Ecuador, where Julian had been documenting the effects of plastic pollution on marine environments, while Olivia attended a conservation summit. Their goodbye at the Quito airport had felt different, heavier, somehow with Julian unusually quiet as they parted. Since then, their communication had followed strange patterns. Julian's messages remained affectionate but brief, sometimes with cryptic references to a project that consumed his time. Twice, their scheduled video calls had been canceled at the last minute. The rational part of Olivia's mind attributed this to poor connectivity in whatever remote location he was working from. But a small, insecure voice whispered other possibilities. As she approached the research center's entrance, she noticed her colleagues gathered by the windows, speaking in excited tones. "There you are," Theo called out. "You need to see this." "See what?" Olivia asked, unwinding her scarf as she followed him inside. Instead of answering, Theo led her toward the center's small exhibition hall, a space normally reserved for educational displays about marine ecosystems. When she stepped through the doorway, Olivia froze in disbelief. Moving slowly through the exhibition, Olivia noticed something extraordinary. Each photograph contained a barely perceptible element that would be meaningful only to her, a research bow. The world's greatest wonders are not simply places to be documented, but moments to be lived. Through my lens, I've witnessed the majesty of mountains and the vastness of oceans, but I never truly saw their meaning until I experienced them through her eyes. A sound behind her made Olivia turn. Julian stood in the doorway, camera absent for once, his expression a mixture of vulnerability and hope. "You did all this?" she whispered, gesturing to the exhibition. "I've been working on it for months," he admitted, crossing the room to stand beside her. National Geographic is featuring it as a special collection called Convergence, documenting how science and art intersect to tell environmental stories. "It's extraordinary," she said, still processing the scope of what he had created. "But why didn't you tell me?" Julian took a deep breath. "Because it's more than an exhibition. It's a proposal." "A proposal?" He gestured to a photograph she hadn't yet examined, a stunning aerial shot of a small island with a research station perched on its rocky coastline. "That's Isla Ventana," he explained. "It's a marine-protected area off the coast of Costa Rica. They're establishing an international research and documentation center there, a permanent facility where scientists and visual storytellers will work together to monitor and communicate the state of our oceans." Understanding began to dawn. "And this relates to us how?" "They've offered me a position as their lead environmental photographer," Julian said, watching her reaction carefully. "A permanent position. No more constant travel. No more month-long separations." Olivia's heart quickened. "Julian, that's—" "And," he continued, pulling an envelope from his pocket, "they're looking for a research director with expertise in coral reef ecosystems and conservation management." He handed her the envelope, which contained an official letter addressed to Dr. Olivia Hampton. "You arranged this?" she asked, scanning the remarkable offer outlined in the letter. "I only made them aware of your work," Julian clarified. "Your reputation and research record did the rest. This isn't nepotism, Olivia. They need someone brilliant, and you're the most brilliant person I know." Olivia's mind raced through the implications. Leaving her established position, relocating to an island research station, building something entirely new, it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "There's one more thing," Julian said, reaching into his pocket again. Instead of the box she half expected, he withdrew a small, smooth stone, pale blue with veins of white quartz running through it. "I found this on the beach the morning after we met," he explained, placing it in her palm. "I've carried it with me to every location, every assignment. A piece of the shore where my life changed." He closed her fingers around the stone. "I'm not asking you to marry me today, Olivia. That's not what this is about. I'm asking if you're willing to build something with me, a life where our work and our relationships strengthen each other rather than compete, where we wake up to the same sunrise and fall asleep to the same stars, where we create something lasting together." Tears blurred Olivia's vision as she looked from the stone to the man before her, the unexpected variable that had transformed her carefully structured existence into something far richer and more complex. "I need to think about this," she said honestly. "The research implications alone—" "Of course," Julian nodded, his expression open. "Take whatever time you need. The position doesn't start for 3 months." That evening, as snowflakes danced, outside her window, Olivia spread her research papers across her kitchen table, creating a methodical analysis of the opportunity before her. She listed pros and cons, researched the scientific credentials of the Isla Ventana project, and calculated the professional impact of such a significant change. Near midnight, her phone chimed with a message from Julian. "Whatever you decide, know that my feelings won't change. Distance hasn't diminished them. Proximity won't either." The simple truth of his words cut through her analytical approach. Some decisions, while informed by reason, ultimately came down to courage. 3 days later, Olivia stood at the edge of the pier where she had conducted countless research expeditions. The winter sun cast long shadows across the water as Julian approached, his expression carefully neutral. "I've been thinking about adaptation," she began without preamble. "It's the cornerstone of survival in marine ecosystems. Species that cannot adapt to changing conditions eventually perish, while those that evolve continue to thrive." Julian waited, allowing her the space to continue her scientific metaphor. "My entire career has been built around observation and analysis," she continued. "I document changes but rarely experience them personally. I've been studying life while watching it pass by from behind my microscope." She took a step toward him. "I'm terrified of leaving everything I've built here, but I'm more terrified of what I might miss if I don't." Julian's expression remained cautious. "Does that mean—" Olivia withdrew an envelope from her coat pocket, her formal acceptance of the research director position. "It means yes, to Isla Ventana, to building something together, to adaptation and evolution and all the scientific principles that somehow seem more meaningful when applied to us." The smile that broke across Julian's face rivaled any sunrise he had ever captured. As he pulled her into an embrace, snowflakes beginning to fall around them, Olivia felt the rightness of her decision settle into certainty. "There's just one condition," she murmured against his shoulder. "Name it." She pulled back to meet his gaze. "The research facility needs a proper rehabilitation center for injured marine species. That's non-negotiable." Julian laughed. "I think I can help make that case. I happen to have some rather compelling photographs of a loggerhead turtle. Release that might persuade the funding committee." 6 months later, as dawn broke over Isla Ventana, Olivia stood on the deck of their modest cottage overlooking the research station and the endless blue horizon beyond. Julian emerged from inside, 2 coffee cups in hand, his camera for once. "Left behind. The coral monitoring boys are showing some unusual activity," she said, accepting the cup he offered. "We should investigate this morning." "Lead the way, Dr. Hampton," Julian replied with a smile. "I'm right beside you." As they made their way down to the research vessels, colleagues already preparing equipment for the day's expedition, Olivia felt the weight of the small blue stone in her pocket, a reminder of shores left behind and the unexpected journey that had brought them here, to this place where their separate paths had converged into a shared horizon. That evening, as sunset painted the sky in impossible colors, Julian knelt on the same deck where they had shared morning coffee. This time, instead of a stone, he held a ring fashioned from a piece of sea glass they had found together on their first exploration of the island, set in silver and as unique as their journey. "Now," he said simply, "I'm asking." And as the first, stars appeared above the endless ocean that had both separated and united them. Olivia gave her answer, not with words or scientific analysis, but with the simplest and most profound form of human communication, a kiss that promised all the discoveries yet to come.